Hello everyone, I'm Denis. I work as a web developer on an outsourced project called My Recovery Site. That's a business continuity planning software, but simply put, the idea behind it that is needed to give businesses tools and ways to manage data in order to be prepared for any kind of disaster or be able to recover from it. And today I want to share some of my thoughts on how you can organize code flow of a complex B2B React web application with RxJS and Redux observable at its core in a way that a random flow of feature requests from every client would be just like in and out. So my speech is not about greatness of RxJS itself, but more about how we utilize this tool to handle really tangled front-end business logic. And I assume that you have at least basic understanding how React and Redux are and how they work together. But it's good that Albert put me third and the previous guys gave you some background. So the first thing that can give you worries while working on a big React project is need to have side effects and ways to manage them. And usually app doesn't work by itself, and it needs ways to communicate with the rest of the world. But out of the box, Redux is synchronous, and reducer functions must be always pure functions. Furthermore, it's not always possible to organize reducers in a way that you don't need data from another reducer. But Redux middleware makes it possible to intercept dispatched action and add additional complex behaviors that include side effects. So when it comes to side effect management within Redux, the standard suggestion is Redux Funk. They are recommended middleware for basic Redux side effects, including complex synchronous logic that needs access to the store of your application, and simple async logic like AJAX requests. Redux Funk is really easy to learn, that it comes without any new concepts. It's just basic JavaScript, so it's easy to pick it up and integrate in your application straight away. On the other side, it does not scale that well as the amount of async logic of your application grows, and you might end up with a very complicated code when we need, for example, orchestrate sequence of requests. And it becomes not really obvious which action creators are just pure actions and which are complex funk actions that have some side effects attached to them, which complicates the flow of your logic even more. And also, Redux Funk is promise-based and promises lacks stuff like cancellation, throttling, and bouncing. So imagine we have separate components on one page. The first component is a combo box with a generate button, and the second component is a table. So when we select something from combo box and click generate, we send request to the API, so we could request, so we could generate data of type that table has. And when it's done, we need to refresh our table. And the way to do it with funks is to pass those heavy action creators here and then to bind our two components together. And in the end, it gets even harder to maintain, as this is just some basic example, but in real-world application, you will need to do this every time. So everything becomes really twisted, and now your code is looking like this. You just don't know where to put another little feature. But there is another solution to side effects management, and it's called Redux Observable. It comes with quite a learning curve, but I'll try to be simple here and focus more on the concept behind it. Like Redux store consists of reducers, Redux Observable has its term to side effects manager blocks, and they are called epics. The idea behind epic that it receives a stream of actions. Stream is called observable, and it also returns the stream of actions, or do nothing with it and return an empty stream. So the flow goes like this. You dispatches an action, reducers updates, it goes to reducers, store changes, and you reflect these changes. But after an action was processed by reducer, it also goes to your epics. So it allows them to do their background magic, including API calls, for example, and when epic is done its job, it dispatches actions back to reducers. But it's important to know that actions dispatched by epics then go back to epics, so we need to be careful not to create endless loops here. And what is actually what it has to do with RxJS that I mentioned in the presentation title. RxJS is what introduces term observable to React Redux world. So Redux Observable is just an easy-to-use wrapper to Redux ecosystem, and RxJS comes with a bunch of pipeable operators to work with observables to meet every of your asynchronous needs. And it's close to impossible to cover them all, but the most useful operators, in my experience, are map. It's just similar to erase map. It takes one action and maps it to another. Merge map, as the name implies, merge stream, but in epics usage, it just when your epic triggers just one other actions, you use map, and if action needs to trigger many, you're using merge map. Switch map is my personal favorite. It comes handy when you need to cancel consequent calls to your API. So, for example, when previous response wasn't fetched yet, but you need to make that request again, it just cancels, and your app doesn't wait for that response, it just takes most recent one. Take until is allows you to stop waiting for a server response when another action happened. The bounce time is similar to a dash bounce. The bounce is consequent calls with some time passed to it, and delays pretty straightforward to name, which is delays every action in your stream. So, brief overview, as a couple of previous slides were too technical. I'll try to break down what exactly it gives to us. Now, all of our actions are pure, and there is no more tricky logic behind them. And now they're more like simple tasks with predictable results. And as all logic separated and decoupled from your components, your views are also simple. And the beauty of epics is that they are always running and in the background, waiting for these tasks to be dispatched to them. And when some action was dispatched, they start their job in the background and in the end produce next tasks. And as epic takes on action in and gives action out, it always does one particular type of job with no magic in between, like you can do this Redux thing. So if you need to add another piece of logic, you need to create another epic. And with a bunch of stuff like debouncing, cancellation, throttling that you can achieve with 1 to a few lines of code, it becomes really easy to handle complex async logic. And now I demonstrate how we bind components together with epic. So generate component that contained number box and button.
It's probably quite hard to see anything. Yeah, try to comment as much as possible.
Read it aloud.
Say again?
Read it aloud.
Yeah. Sorry.
So our first epic waits that is responsible for generating tasks, waits for action of type generate tasks to start its magic of calling API and to generate a task. And when that response was fulfilled, we dispatched action of type generate task success. On the bottom we have our epic for table component. So we need to expose some functionality of that component so we could refresh that table. And this epic starts off, it waits for action of type refresh table, and when it receives it, it calls, well, for example, get request to the API to get most recent data from API, and when it's done, it dispatches action of type update table. And now these two components and these two epics don't know about each other. And we did it on purpose so we could bind them from outside. And our third epic, we can call it like talk epic, waits for action of type generate task success, and then maps it to refresh table. So it seems like a bit of unnecessary step, but we did it on purpose to isolate it, those two components. And this approach really shines when we want to have several instances of one component on the same page at the same time. And I'll show you in a bit how we achieve that. So I've extended our previous example with another table. So first table is for tasks, and second is for events. And we don't want to have several different components behaving exactly the same, just working with different types of data. We would like to somehow reuse our components with different configurations to them. And we want to have the ability to instantiate the same component on page several times. And out of the box, again, Redux have no ability to do this. So we added it ourselves. And we call this concept namespaces. The idea behind it that each component that has to be reused now has a special space for them. And each instance of that component have a unique name. So actions are and states don't clash. When a component appears on the page, we create a substate for it in its space. And also we have like a special wrapper for a component that defines to which namespace this particular component belongs. And now each action dispatched within that namespace has not only an type as an address property, but also a name and a space. But basically we could achieve that by adding set of function. So when components unmount on the page, we usually drop its state and any side effects attached to them, ensuring that the next time that component appears on the page, we have restored clean and ready, and nothing from the old states would intervene. So now when we are sure that our component is isolated from each other, we could use our orchestration epics even more precisely. Like so, this is the same top-level epic, but now it has some extra props to out action. When tasks have been generated, we trigger it to refresh table, but specifically to table with names, name tasks. And our second table, that was advanced, know nothing about it. So now everything is really organized, and there is always space for new stuff to come. So, what exactly makes you start living? Complex logic is decoupled from your components and action creators, and all action creators are pure as well as components, and it makes them really predictable. When epics are the only place where some magic is allowed. And yet, each epic is only responsible for one kind of thing, so with some usage, it's really easy to read them, and as new features come, and it's really simple to inject some new logic to that infrastructure without potentially breaking anything or twist action dispatches in unpredictable manner. And observables are almighty when it comes to handling side effects, AJAX requests, or some user events, as it comes with a bunch of useful operators to mess around with strings. And it's only up to you to get your head around of RxJS documentation and master them all, so you can write really elegant code, but no one except with you will understand it. And namespace concept that we use is not only allowed our primary components within our product to be reusable, but also ensures that bugs don't spread across all the applications, and they live their short lives only in that little space.
Yeah, bugs in short lives.
And with all being said, I feel pretty confident with this piece of technology in my hands, and I can sleep well at night.
Great, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denis.
Any questions?
Any questions from hardcore front-end developers? Yes, please.
Hello, Denis, thank you for time to talk about this topic. I have a question. If you use RxJS, it's only one tiny step to remove Redux. You don't need it. You don't need Redux if you just create a subject inside one of the services and create your actions like emission of the same items.
So, sorry, can you speak a little bit louder, because
Oh, you can come close the question if you want.
Just one step between using RxJS and Redux together is remove Redux. You don't need it because Redux is a huge thing written not by you and not very agile, and you can remove it and use it. Do you ever consider? Because you can create smaller states and always manage them, and if with TypeScript you can do whatever you want with it.
Well, the first thing that we don't use TypeScript. We actually use Flow, but it's really laggy, so we don't use it in the end. The second thing that initially our project was written around Redux and Thunks, and as it grows, it will be it was nearly close to impossible to rewrite that all. And I really have no problems with using Redux just for store management. It's not that big, and it's really simple and lightweight. I don't know why do you consider it like
Sometimes
extra necessary step. Why do we need to create some custom stuff and support it when there is a solution that already works and we are satisfied with it?
if application is growing, you not always need to have all things in one store. You should spread them around because sometimes data come from REST, sometimes from socket, sometimes from local storage, sometimes from user input. And you don't need to keep, I don't know, the list of users and passwords. There's a list of, I don't know, sizes of some components. You don't need it at all, and you should react differently for different changes. And you can split it easily.
Well, first of all, it's not really, it becomes not functional when it's stored within one application.
Oh,
so
we're going deeper. Let's close
we
it.
still have one store.
I think so. Let's close it. I'm meaning that RxJS is so powerful that it can take the functions from the global things like Redux. So I think it should be at least sometimes and thinking about going deeper inside this because it's a beautiful piece of.
Thanks for that notice. I haven't really ever thought about giving up Redux in favor of some custom stuff. But
Why not TypeScript?
Hmm?
Why not TypeScript? TypeScript is perfect for Redux.
Because when I just started working and I wasn't making decisions, my oldest colleague did. And
It was like predetermined.
yeah, it was predetermined by him. He has a sad story with TypeScript as they didn't accept his pull request, so he was really angry at them, and he decided that we need to use Flow.
So it all came from his childhood, you know?
Yeah,
Thank you.
but I don't really like using Flow because it's too buggy and slow.
Yeah, we can continue at the after party. Any more questions about this?
Yeah, can I have a question? Redux comes as a simple, like primitive solution, but what about Redux Saga? We were used to it and it handles a lot of problems like debugging, requests and so on. Why should we switch to RxJS, for example? Can you give a quick result?
Well, I can't say that you need to drop Redux Saga and start using this pattern, because I haven't really raised my hand around sagas. But as I know, sagas have a special syntax to them, while RxJS can be used with other technologies, not just Redux, and I just consider it more universal solution. For example, observables are mostly usable in Angular, not just Redux. But I can really say that sagas are bad, and you should stop using them.
Yeah, I agree with you because RxJS feels natural in Redux because we have the subscriptions, like listening for actions, right? And I just waiting for the bigger community for Redux Rx, like React Rx, right?
Redux observable.
Yeah. For maybe more improved documentation for this.
You don't really need to have documentation especially for Redux observable, because RxJS itself has a pretty
Yeah,
complex
it's just
documentation, and Redux Observable is pretty simple. Actually, I haven't seen them updating their repository on GitHub for last year, so I assume that it works that good.
Okay. Yes, please.
Did you test it also this ASCII testing?
Is this feature tested?
No, no. Rx has a very fun way of testing because you can't actually test it properly in a regular way. You write something like ASCII symbols that emulate signals.
Well, yeah. But we don't have tests for everything. We just have some small unit test for some custom stuff. We wrote this thing with namespaces, and we really didn't need to have anything else.
But
So there's no much testing for this stuff.
But I always thought that state management is kinda the most important thing in the app, and
Yeah, it's important, but since it's functional, it's really predictable. We have some, as I said, some basic unit tests, so we can be sure that our namespaces pattern works as it should, but we don't have tests for everything. And if we need to add some specific tests for components, we mostly use end-to-end testing.
Anyone else? Any questions? Yeah. Yes, thank you so much for educating us